Are you ready to Rhinebeck? I'm using that right? Rhinebeck is a verb? I think so. Anyway, I'm ready to Rhinebeck. I will see you on the other side. Welcome to Gary Knits, Gary Rides, a Craftivism podcast at the intersection of making things and doing good. My name is Gary. I'm a knitter and a crocheter. I am also a cyclist with AIDS Lifecycle, a 7-day, 545-mile bike ride raising money for the life-saving work of the San Francisco AIDS Foundation and the Los Angeles LGBT Center. As part of my fundraising, I run a series of Knitalongs and Crochetalongs called the End AIDS Knitalongs and Crochetalongs, as well as an occasional fiber auction on Instagram called D-Stash for Good. I hope everyone is doing well. It has been a minute since I spoke to you all. I got a bit of a delay. I went on vacation and was hoping to record a podcast when I got back, but then got called to Texas for a funeral, and so I didn't get to do that last week. So I'm doing it now when I probably should be packing for my trip to New York and on to the Hudson Valley for the Rhinebeck festivities this year. This is my first time going there. We're going to talk a lot about that, but I wanted to welcome all of you to joining me today. If this is your first time visiting, thank you so much for tuning in. If you are a returning viewer, thank you as well. I really appreciate the time you take to spend with me every couple of weeks or so. As I mentioned, it has been a jam-packed 3 weeks since I filmed my last video. We were on vacation. We went to Ireland, which was kind of one of those bucket list trips for me. We had an amazing time. I had been to Dublin before when I was a university student, the summer before my last year in school, and then I'd been to Dublin a couple times on business back when I was working in New York, but always just kind of fly in, go to the hotel, get up, have a couple meetings, and fly back out. So I'd never really spent any time anywhere in Ireland outside of Dublin, and in Dublin it was really fairly limited. So we had an amazing time in the country. We flew into Dublin, spent a few days there to try to get our jet lag taken care of, just enjoyed walking around the city, and then we rented a car and then spent the next 2.5 weeks or so driving basically clockwise all the way around the country, ending up in Belfast, then spent a couple nights in London visiting friends, and then came on home. So it was a long trip, but I really feel like we had a great pace in terms of not having to rush through things. We were able to spend a couple days here, a couple days there. Got to see just about everything that we wanted to see. There's always too many things to see and too little time to see them. So we did miss a couple of the bigger sites. But all in all, I think we covered a lot of ground. It is an absolutely beautiful country. It is so green. I mean, obviously it's called the Emerald Isle, but it is just lush with greenery and lots of livestock and just a really, really picturesque country. The people are as charming as you are led to believe they are. We had a great time meeting folks all around the country, and just really enjoyed the drive. We enjoyed driving vacations, and it was a great country to drive in, even though we had we had some quick mishaps right off the bat when we started driving on the left-hand side of the road. It was all initially the first one was mine, coming right out of the rental car, even though we said stay to the left, stay to the left, stay to the left. When I got to the first intersection and needed to make a left-hand turn, rather than turning and staying to the left, I went all the way around the oncoming lane in traffic. There was two oncoming lanes of traffic, so I went all the way around the car that was parked, and then drove the wrong way down a bus lane in the middle of Dublin. Luckily, there was no buses coming, but it was early in the morning, and I think I was a source of great entertainment to a lot of the commuters who saw me driving the wrong way up the street. Quickly recovered, and that was the only real incident that I had. My husband had his own, but that's not my story to tell. So, anyway, we had a great time driving, saw a lot of really beautiful sights. Did the Ring of Kerry, the Dingle Slayhead Drive. Got to spend time in Cork with a yarny friend of mine. So she is on Instagram as Evan Bale. She is a designer, and she is really the person who got the End AIDS Knitalongs and Crochetalongs to where they are today. She encouraged me early on to think beyond just having a single Knitalong and expand it to doing multiple events per year to raise money, and that really spurred me to do that. So it was great to finally meet her in person. She was also one of the designers for, and I'm going to forget exactly which version or which edition of the Knitalong or Crochetalong. I want to say it was maybe winter 2 years ago. I can't remember, but we made her trifecta shawl, which was a 3 skein DK weight shawl, where you had kind of a randomized element to which patterns you were doing at any given section. It was also a mystery Knitalong, which was the only time we've done that. So I'm very grateful for Evan, and was great to finally meet her in person and hang out with her. In terms of other yarny things, unfortunately, I guess one of the big surprises for me for Ireland was there is not as big and sort of well-defined sort of indie dyer in terms of places to buy yarn and things like that. So there is a apparently wonderful yarn store in Dublin called This Is Knit, which everyone said is a must stop. You have to go. It's fantastic. It's amazing. We happened to be in Dublin on 3 days when it was closed, so I did not get to stop at This Is Knit. And much like the U.S. in this regard, a lot of when you would Google for like local yarn stores, a lot of them were kind of a smaller but equivalent version of kind of a Joann. So they carry a lot of commercial yarn that is available all over Europe, but it's nothing that I was going to go out of my way to try to find. And so there weren't kind of the yarn stores that I would expect to see here in the U.S. when I think of a local yarn store with a lot of indie dyed yarn, in addition to some more commercial yarns as well. We tried to find them where we could, but we did in Cork, which is where Evan is headquartered. Carol Feller, who's on Instagram as Stolen Stitches, amazing knitwear designer, just cables for days. She has her studio there, and she also has a small yarn shop attached to it. So I was able to pop in there while we were in Cork and get to meet Carol face to face. I am starting one of her blankets, which I think I've talked about before, as a housewarming gift. Much delayed, but a housewarming gift for a friend of mine called the Curdock blanket. And so I was able to talk to her about that. I wanted to find yarn to make myself an Aran-ish sweater while I was over in Ireland. And I was also looking for patterns because I went through Ravelry and I was trying to find just a regular cardigan pattern. Didn't want a shawl collar, didn't want zips. I just wanted a V-neck cardigan, but Aran-y kind of pattern. So I've been searching for those, and one of them that came up was one of Carol's patterns, but it was shown on a woman model, and I wanted to talk to her about whether or not there were any modifications to the pattern that she thought I should do if I wanted to make it for myself. So we were able to talk about that. She has a line of yarn that she has developed using some Irish wool and some New Zealand wool, and so I was able to pick up some of that. I'm going to show all this, all the stuff that I bought a little later in the episode. But it was great fun to meet her, and then I found out she's actually going to be up in Rhinebeck as well, so I'll get to see her again as well. It was interesting, the wool situation in Ireland, because I guess it is not a climate that is suitable for merino sheep. Most of the wool that is grown in, or that is made in Ireland, is very, very rough, kind of like the wool that you would expect in a traditional Aran sweater. So there's not a ton of indie dyers that use Irish wool. So when you think of, Hedgehog or Life of the Long Grass, some of the Irish dyers that they're using mainly merino stuff. And both of those, since I could find those in the U.S., I didn't really mind that I missed out on visiting their shop and seeing their stuff, just because I can find that here in the U.S. So it was a little bit, I don't want to say it was disappointment. It was just a little bit different than what I was expecting in terms of the availability of unique yarn to Ireland that I could buy. I did find some, so I'll show you that in a little bit, and some of the other things that I found along the way. But it was very, very cool to meet Evan and to meet Carol and to visit Carol in her studios. I guess the other sort of yarny thing, or yarn adjacent thing, that we did was we spent a night on the Aran Islands. So we, and it was really, for other reasons, it was actually probably the low point of the trip. We took the ferry over to Inishmore, which is the biggest of the three Aran Islands, and spent the night there. There were a couple of woolen shops there on the island where you can buy the hand knit Aran sweaters made locally by mainly women knitters there, and they also had some yarn available. Unfortunately for us, Winter Storm Agnes was bearing down on Ireland the day we were scheduled to go on the ferry. So we thought that it might cancel our ferry. It didn't actually. It accelerated us getting out there because they wanted to get us to the island before some of the heavier winds came along. But the forecast was for rain pretty much the entire time we were there. We did get to walk around some without pouring rain. And then the morning after we had spent the night, we thought we would just jump on they have these mini, kind of the ways to get around the island are sort of these mini buses where they pick up people who are coming on the ferry for the day, tour them around, get them back to the ferry, to the mainland that afternoon. So we thought we were going to join one of those minivan tours because the forecast was for rain. They also have these pony carts that take people around, and then you can rent bikes. But we got up that morning and it wasn't sunny, but it wasn't raining, and so we decided to roll the dice and rented e-bikes, and that was great for the first half of the day. So we were able to get out of the little town. There's another little village further out on the island, very close to where the big archaeological site, which is a big stone fort, ancient stone fort, that everyone is meant to see while you're there. So we cruised out on our bikes. It was actually kind of a lovely morning, a lovely ride. We had beat the people coming in on the ferry, so we decided to grab a bit to eat, and then the rain started. So we popped into a couple sweater shops, did some shopping, and then we decided to try to go to the fort. It was raining, but not heavy. It was about a half-mile hike, I would say, out there. We got about a third of the way, and then the sky just opened up. It was windy. It was rainy. We got soaked, and we decided to turn back, so we didn't even make it to the fort. And then we had to get back on the bikes and probably had a 40-minute ride back into town, and we were just completely water soaked by the time we got back to town and turned in the bikes. Luckily, we had put aside a change of clothes, but it didn't really help with wet shoes, so we basically spent that day kind of huddled indoors around a stove in the kind of lobby of the place we were staying, trying to get our shoes to dry out, but they did not, and so wet ride back on the ferry to the mainland. So Aran Islands were a bit of a wash, but got some yarn, and my husband bought a couple of sweaters, which we'll see how much use they get in Southern California, but it's beside the point, I suppose. So, and then in London, in terms of yarny things, I was able to pop over to Loops, which I'd never visited in Islington, and it's a delightful shop. I got some stuff there, so I'll show that as well. But highly recommend a trip to Ireland if you ever get the chance, even if it's for not as long as we had. I would say highlights were Cork, the Ring of Kerry, Dingle Peninsula drives, and then we really enjoyed Belfast. So we ended up in Belfast and kind of wish we had a couple extra days there as well. So fantastic. Anyone has any questions about what we did, please reach out to me. I'm happy to share any details we had. As I mentioned, then we got back and I had to turn right around and go to Texas for a funeral. One of my best friends from high school passed away suddenly, and so I had to go back home for that, which was sad. But I was glad that the timing worked out, that we were already back from Ireland, and I was able to do that and spend a little time with his family and celebrate his life. He was an artist and very instrumental in being in my life at pivotal moments. So I was glad to be able to go back and celebrate with him. So that's what's been going on for the last couple of weeks, or more like a month probably for for me. There's been a fair amount of knitting as well. I took a lot more projects on the trip to Ireland than I thought I would have time for, and I was surprised. I finished a lot of things on the trip. I happened to lose some knitting while I was there. On somewhere between LA and Dublin, I lost a little bag that had a hat that I was working on for Knit the Rainbow, and then it had several interchangeable needles as well as some cables. So thankfully I had other projects in another bag. I was able to work on those until I got to Cork, and at Carol Feller's shop I was able to pick up some replacement needles so that I could get started on a hat. And then I finished everything, and so I had to buy some yarn at Loop in London and was able to start and almost finished a hat on the flight back home. We flew to land in LA at about 10 o'clock at night, and so I wanted to try to stay awake the entire 10 and a half, 11 hour trip so that I was dead tired when I got home and could go right to bed. So I had a ton of knitting on that plane to try to keep me awake. So anyway, we were back. I'm about to turn around and do some more traveling right away as I head up to Rhinebeck. But I just wanted, in terms of some housekeeping, updates on the Knitalong and Crochetalong. So there are 2 weeks left in the fall Knitalong and Crochetalong. You still have time to join because 2 of the projects are hats that you could easily finish in 2 weeks. I'm going to talk about one of them that I actually finished here in a minute. So that will run until the end of October. We just did the halftime prize giveaway last week when I got back, and we are down now to the final 3 rounds of prizes. So there'll be a final FO round, or a final whip round, a final FO round, and then the grand prize. And that'll all happen at the very end of the month. We'll take a little break, and the next Knitalong and Crochetalong is going to start January 1st. Very excited about that. So details will be coming out on that as we head into November. So D-Stash for Good. If you saw my live just the other day, I mentioned that I am planning to do the second D-Stash for Good auction of the year in late November. I'm going to open up submissions sometime during the first week of November. I will keep those open for about a week or until we get about 300 listings. And then the plan is for me to compile all that stuff over the next 2 weeks, and then Black Friday, so the day after Thanksgiving, kick off the auction, which will then run for about 2 weeks. I will get the exact dates and details as we get a little bit closer. Quite frankly, I just have to look at the calendar and kind of figure out what works, because I always like to try to keep the auction open over a 2-weekend spread. So I just need to look at how the timing of that works. So that is coming up, and then there are a couple of top secret projects that I am working on, one of which will be coming to light sooner rather than later, so stay tuned for that. And then one of them is not going to be publicly talked about until the spring. These are both sort of big projects for me to try to push myself over my fundraising goal for AIDS Lifecycle to get to my ultimate $200,000 goal, and then be able to retire from the biking portion of that activity. So that is what is going on. Just a couple of prize housekeeping things. After I got back from Flock, so this is August, so over a month and a half, almost 2 months ago, I was going to do a giveaway through YouTube to give someone a $50 gift certificate to Desert Panda Fiber Arts. If you recall, she had her trailer broken into at Flock, and a lot of her excess merchandise got stolen, and so I got a bought a $50 gift card to kind of help her out, and was going to give that to someone. It's been a couple of months ago. Since then, the winner has never come forward to claim the prize, so I am going to redraw that. So if you are Angela Franklin Lord 8526, you are the new winner of the $50 gift card from Desert Panda Fiber Arts. Please reach out to me at GaryKnitsGaryRides@gmail.com to let me know that you've seen this. If I do not hear from you in 2 weeks' time, so that by the time I film the next episode, we will move on to another winner. So you have 2 weeks to get to me. Otherwise, we'll move on to another winner. The other thing that I should mention in terms of giveaways is every Monday now I'm doing a giveaway over on Instagram Live for the Knit the Rainbow accessories drive that I'm running. If you aren't familiar with that, there will be a link down below with an FAQ. But basically, we are working on accessories for Knit the Rainbow, which distributes and collects and distributes cold weather accessories for homeless LGBTQ plus youth in New York, Chicago, and this year in Detroit as well. We are making and collecting those through December 15th. And all the details on how you can send your items in, how to tally up what you are making so you can be entered into the big prizes that will happen at the end of December. All of that is in the FAQ. But in addition to those big prizes, each week I'm doing a little drawing of anyone who posts pictures of their FOs or whips on accessories that they're working on for the accessories drive over on Instagram using the hashtag GaryKnitsTheRainbow23. I should have mentioned up front, you can find me on Instagram. See, I'm a little rusty with this. You can find me on Instagram as Gary Knits Gary Rides. I am also on Ravelry as Gary Knits and Rides, where we also have a group for the Knitalong and Crochetalong. So, with all the housekeeping and what's been going on out of the way, let's talk about Rhinebeck, which will also be an entry into talking about knitting and an FO. So, let's talk about this sweater, and then we'll talk about, then I'm going to take it off because it's quite warm, and then we can talk about what's going on for Rhinebeck weekend. So I finally finished. This is my Rhinebeck sweater. It is the first sweater I've ever made for myself, and it is my first pullover sweater full stop. I had a ball making this. This is the Painting Honeycombs sweater by Stephen West. It is made, the main color is Shibui Knits Haven in the colorway Suit, and then the contrasting color is called Rum Punch by Fully Spun. It is a DK weight sweater. I had significant help from Valerie of Creations by Valerie on Instagram, or A Visit with Nana and Papa here on YouTube. She is a sweater maven in terms of modifying sweater patterns to make sure you get the product that you want and the fit that you want. So we've made some adjustments, including extra short rows around the neck, and some short rows then around the around the chest after the yoke to sort of make the fit what I was looking for. I did my own set of decreases on the arms versus what Stephen had put in his pattern, so that it was a little snugger for my arms, and I could not be happier with the fit. I'm going to pop in a little video I filmed. I'll do it over here. There you go. Just to give you the full view. The only other thing, I think, modifications that I made were I did some contrast on the cuffs and on the hem. Did a tubular bind off on those, so I love the way that it looks. It is the Shibui Haven is a merino cashmere blend. I think it's 80% merino, maybe 20% cashmere. It's quite warm, even for a DK weight sweater. It's very cozy. It's going to be nice in Rhinebeck, given the temperatures that we're supposed to have, but it may be a little too warm for most of the winter around here. There, we may get a couple of days here where I could wear it out for a walk with the dogs in the morning. But I love the way it turned out. I love the use of this fully spun rum punch, just how it gets, a little bit of picks up a little bit of the blue and some of the speckles. If you've seen the Stephen West pattern original, he does different colors in each of the honeycomb rows, or they alternates maybe between 3 or something. But I love the use of a single single color here. So if I were living back on the East Coast, this sweater would get worn all the time because it's a perfect. I love the colors and I love the fit. Even after 2.5 weeks of a lot of fish and chips and lots of Guinness, it still fits. So I know it's gonna stretch out a little bit just by nature of the yarn, but it blocked up really well. It's a little fuzzy. I mean, the cashmere content gives it a little fuzz, so it's not just as smooth a knit as you might get with just a plain merino. But I think it's going to be a great sweater to have in Rhinebeck. So I'm going to take this off so that I don't die of heat exhaustion in here, and then we will talk about the rest of my FOs and webs. Thanks. Okay, I'm back and much more comfortable. Yeah, that's quite a warm sweater, especially as the sun's streaming into through this window. So we're gonna talk about the rest of the whips and the FOs, but I wanted to talk about Rhinebeck. Big picture, it is my first trip to the New York Sheep and Wool weekend up in the Hudson Valley. When I lived in New York, I don't even know that I really knew that it existed, or I just didn't have a sense of like how big of a deal it was. I was also just not as plugged into the knitting world as I am now. And so I think I wasn't knitting as much. I mean, I had an occasional project, but it wasn't like I always had something going on, because I had a 50-60 hour a week job, and was doing some housing stuff. So I just didn't knit as much as I do now, and I have a lot more free time. So I'm really excited. Like I said, I think on Instagram Live, I definitely had FOMO last year when it seemed like everybody in the world was going, because it was the first post-pandemic Rhinebeck. And so I went ahead and booked it for this year, got a house. I'm really excited. A big group of us, most of whom are participate in the weekly Zooms for the Knitalong Crochetalong, some of whom I've met in person, some of whom I've never met in person. We've all got this big house in the area, and we're only like 15 or 20 minutes from all of the festivities. We have tickets for everything on Friday. I don't know how we're gonna grab it all in, but we have tickets for Indie Untangled, we have tickets for Cake Palooza, we have tickets for Woolen Folk. So we will be at all of those events. I'm driving up from New York City on the Thursday, so I'm going to plan to stop at Pick Up Every Stitch, where I know Moondrake is doing a trunk show on Thursday afternoon, and I think some other podcasters and stuff are going to be kind of hanging out there in the shop. So I'm looking forward to that, and then 2 full days at the actual New York Sheep and Wool Festival. Feel free to chime in below in the comments if you have a strategy for how to do that. Unfortunately, the weather doesn't look like it's going to be fantastic. I mean, it's going to be cool, which is nice from a sweater perspective, but it's supposed to be rainy, which I'm not super excited about. But I definitely got my fill of rain in Ireland, although I've got to say the temperature in Ireland is just perfect for me. It's like sort of in the 50s and 60s like all the time. And if you can, you know, deal with the sort of raininess, I think it's a wonderful climate. But so maybe it'll just feel like Ireland in Rhinebeck this year. But I'm hoping it's not terrible pouring rain and super muddy, because that'll be a drag, especially as we're, you know, trying to meet people outside, which will just be much more comfortable. So if you have any strategies for how to tackle it, I'm thinking on Saturday I'm probably just going to hang out and meet people. If you happen to see me, say hi. I have a whole new set of pins and I have some stickers, so hit me up and remind me to give you one, because sometimes I get chit-chatting and forget to to hand out pins and stickers. But definitely say hello if you happen to see me. But I don't know how much shopping I'll do on Saturday, because I have to be there on Sunday for some other stuff. So I figured I'd go back through, and quite frankly, I know I'm going to buy yarn, but I'm really planning on not buying a ton. I have a couple of project-specific things that I want to buy some yarn for. My husband, despite the fact that he bought 3 sweaters, when we were in Ireland and he saw me looking at patterns for Aran-type cardigans, asked if I would someday make one for him. So if I can find some yarn for that, I think that would be something I would buy for. Otherwise, I'm just going to try to be selective and pick up little things here and there. But you know, I know that I will end up with yarns. It's fine, because oftentimes when I go to shows like this and there are show exclusives, which are always so tempting, I just end up getting them and using those for prizes for giveaways. So there'll probably be some of that as well. So not all of it will go into stash, but I'll still be able to feel like I'm, you know, participating in the fun of getting show exclusives and helping out or supporting indie dyers along the way as well. But I'm really looking forward to meeting people more than anything. And I love the Hudson Valley. It's just such a beautiful part of the country. So I'm really psyched to be back there. So on to the FO and Whip Parade. As I mentioned, on vacation, I did a hell of a lot of knitting. I drove less than I usually do. Usually on our vacations, I tend to do the majority of the driving, or that's how it has been for the last several vacations when I've been super actively knitting. But this time my husband decided that he wanted to do about half of it, so we split it up pretty evenly, which just gave me a lot more time to knit in the car. And the things I was knitting in the car were like so easy that I hardly had to look at them, and I could just kind of also enjoy the scenery, since that was one of the main draws of the trip to Ireland in the first place. So I took with me 3 shawls and 2 hats. As I mentioned, I lost one of the hats before we even got to Dublin. So I was down to 3 shawls, one of which was started right before we left, and then 1 hat. I had a ball of Felice worsted that I was going to make into a hat, but I didn't have the needles until we got to Cork. So the first 2 shawls that I made are the same pattern. It's called Orbit by, and I'll put it up here, I think it's Janina Kalilo. Woolenberry, I believe, is her Instagram handle. And it's called the Orbit shawl. It is a single skein DK weight shawlette, scarf, or I tend to think of shawlettes mainly as scarves, because I don't wear them kind of wrapped around my shoulders. I tend to just tie them up like a scarf. Apropos, and I didn't really even plan it this way, but this is done in Life in the Long Grass. And I can't remember what the colorway is called, like Marsh or something like that, I believe. Perfect colors for me. This olive green and dark blue is just right up my alley. But it makes a fairly generously long shawlette. Not particularly deep. I think it's 15 inches deep at the center. But I finished this, it may have been on the plane over. I started it a couple days before just to get the pattern going. and knit on it the whole way. And if it wasn't finished on the flight, it was knit. It was finished pretty pretty soon thereafter. I think it was. I think I may have even posted. I think I may have finished it on one of our layover in London. I'm sitting in the lounge. So anyway, I wore it. I didn't block it, but I wore it the whole trip. So this is basically, even though it's called a shalette, this is basically how I've been wearing it. Although sometimes I do have wrapped it around, kind of kerchiefy style like that. But I absolutely love it. It's a great size, a great weight, especially for California. As the fall and winter comes in, this will definitely get some use. So highly recommend if you have a generous skein of a DK. I can't remember what the pattern actually called for, but it is one of those, as you're going to see in a minute, that if you have more or less yarn, especially if you have more yarn than what it calls for, you can just keep going. And then the only change is when you add this sort of mesh lace border on the edge. So finished that one, and then immediately started up on the. Well, actually, no, I didn't. I decided to take a pause from that pattern, and the second shawl that I worked on was a worsted weight, 2 skeins of worsted. Oh no, DK. I think it was also listed as DK. It would help if I wrote things down, but it is called Zany Zebra by Chic and Regal Knits. It's a 2 skein shawl. I'll put up here whether it was DK or worsted. And I was using yarn from Chameleon Yarn Co., Chameleon Fiber Co., in a colorway called Summer Sunset. And I'll pop a picture up here of the finished product. When I got home, I was showing it to my sister-in-law. I did not think it was her colors, and I've made her a hat before. I've never made her a shawl, and I said, I don't think this is for you, but any chance that you would wear this? And she was like, oh yeah, I'm trying to add new colors to my wardrobe, and that'll be great. It's very autumnal looking. So I was thrilled that she was interested in taking it. So she has it now, so I don't have it here to show off, but there's a picture of what it looked like. Fun pattern. The yarn was also very, very fun. As I said, very, very, very autumnal. I think the yarn, which is why I offered it for her, it was just something that I didn't think I would ever wear. For whatever reason, the color, as it looked in the skein, it was attractive to me. When it was knit up, and it may, excuse me, may have just been a combination of the pattern and the yarn, because I like the pattern and I like the yarn separately. I just think together, at least, is something I would wear. It didn't pan out, but would recommend the pattern. Super fast, again, kind of like the Orbit. It was one where once you got started, it was autopilot. You barely had to pay attention to what you were doing, count some garter ridges, and then you knew it was time to switch patterns. And ended up with a very, very generous shawl once it blocked out aggressively, given the garter stitch, and then there's the lace panel as well. So got a very, very generously sized shawl out of it. So when I finished that up, I started on my second Orbit shawl. This was done using a Shibui Knits yarn called Echo, and it is merino and silk. Now, it is listed on the label as DK. I would say, and it was definitely more yardage than the Life in the Long Grass DK. So I would say it's probably more like a sport. So I had a lot more of it. And so what I did was I just kept going until I felt like I had enough to finish the mesh border and then bind off. So it's definitely a bigger version of this than the first one I knit, but because the yarn is just lighter, and that's probably the silk. It's just a lighter weight shawl than the other one. So even though it's bigger, I think this one is going to be perfect for even late summer when we go to the Hollywood Bowl in the evening. here in California, because it's almost like wearing nothing, and it's really just more of a style accessory than something to keep you warm. But since gray is one of my 4 primary colors, I think that it will get a lot of use as well. And so I think I may take both of these to Rhinebeck. That's the other thing about Rhinebeck is, I only have the one sweater that I've knit, so I don't have to choose which Rhinebeck sweater because it's only the one, and I think we'll wear that on Saturday at the actual Rhinebeck. So then it's a question of which shawls and how many shawls to bring, and whether or not I change in between each event on Friday, change the shawl, or just have one to carry me through. I think it's going to kind of depend on the rain situation, and if I have to put a rain jacket on, then is there any point to really wearing a nice knit shawl? But I think this is going to be one of the ones that goes with me in case in case it gets a little warmer than I'm expecting. So that was that in terms of the shawls. So I got 3 shawls completed while we were on the trip, and this light is getting aggressive, so I'm going to pull down the shade. 1 second. It's a little more diffused, I think. And then, as I mentioned, I had a hat that I lost, so I didn't have that, and I had some yarn to make a second hat, so I did that. This is Christian's hat. It is, as I mentioned, done in Felici's worsted. The colorway is Friendly Skies. I've made this hat before. I think I made one for some of the roadies on AIDS Lifecycle this last year. But it's a really fun, very quick, very easily memorized stitch pattern, which I think looks pretty good in this stripe pattern. So I had about a third of the ball of Felici left, but I didn't bring another ball of it, so I kind of held on to that. And I think this is going to be a project I take with me to Rhinebeck. So I've found, using most patterns, that I can get 3 hats out of 2 balls of Felici. So I've got about a ball and a third left to go. And I don't know which pattern I'm going to make, but it's probably either going to be this will be a Knit the Rainbow hat, but I may make the second one for Sunny at Noodly Knits, who does a hat drive every year for her uncle, who runs a cancer center in South Korea. I would have mentioned it in the Craftivism section this week, but she closed down the signups for that earlier this week. It's the first year she's done signups just to try to get a handle on how many hats are coming in, because I think she got overwhelmed a little bit last year. So I'll probably knit up one of those for her, because I told her I'd make a couple of hats for that as well. And I've hit my goal for Knit the Rainbow. I had one of my 2023, I don't think I used the word goal, I think I said intentions, was to knit 10 items to donate to Knit the Rainbow, and I think I'm there. I have hats and cowls, and I'll probably get a couple more done with the accessories drive this year, so I feel pretty good about that. But fun hat, Christian's hat. I will put the name and the designer up here, because I forget who the designer is of that. So that was the last project that was an FO from vacation. So I got three shawls and that hat done. The other FO that I have is one that I finished on when I got home. I should have taken this with me. If you remember last episode when I was talking about travel knitting and what to pack, and I wasn't going to take any of the Knitalong or Crochetalong items because I didn't think that they were conducive to travel knitting. They either had techniques that need a little more focus from me, or just something about them that required more attention than I thought I would be able to give them while riding in a car or riding on a plane. So I finished this just this last weekend when I was on my trip to Texas, because when I picked it back up when I got home, I realized I could have probably taken this with me, because the stitch pattern is much simpler to do, and I could have easily finished it up. But this is the Stars Align hat, designed by Melissa K Designs. This was designed for the Dates Knitalong and Crochetalong Fall 23 edition. So there was a hat and there were a set of mittens. Mittens, not mitts, full mittens. I have not started those yet, and I don't know when that is going to happen. I'm going to try to get them done by the end of the year, so I can maybe throw them into the rainbow pile when I get back. This is a DK weight 2-color hat. The yarn that was dyed up specifically for the Knitalong Crochetalong is from UP North Yarns. So Monica at UP North Yarns. There is the color that I've used here in the brim, which is called Morning Glories, and then the color that has the white with speckles, and that is called Speckled Jewels. They work really, really well together. It's not, it's because they work so well together. The white definitely stands out, but because of the speckles, sometimes it blends in more. So it's not as here on screen. It's a pretty strong contrast. When you're knitting it up, it doesn't really feel as starkly contrast as it is. But I like the way the pooling worked around the brim. I just think that they're really, really pretty colors. And it's, as I said, it is a very easily memorizable 4-row repeat pattern. I did not check for gauge, and I probably should have gone down a little size in needles if I were knitting this for myself. Since I knew it was going to be a Knit the Rainbow hat, I didn't really care too much about the gauge because I know that it will fit. It'll fit someone, but I have a tiny little head, and it would have been pretty big on me. So probably should have gone down a size on the needle. So if you are knitting it for yourself, and someone else had the same comment, I would recommend testing out the gauge because mine was a little big. But this is Stars Align hat, and the mittens have the same pattern, but it's flipped so that you start the rim, or the cuffs of the mittens will be done in the white, and then the star pattern is similar. So it should look roughly the same because you do the stars in both colors. They just show up more vividly in the white. Stars Align hat. So that, I think, is all of the FOs that I have. I have been working a lot because I had another trip, so I was able to do some work on the flights to and from Dallas. I've been trying to work a little bit more on all of the other Knitalongs and Crochetalongs, just because of these 2 top secret projects that I mentioned earlier. My time devoted to projects that I'm working on for me, or actual knitting projects, has been diminished a little bit, not too much, but I'm spending more time on the computer doing documents and things like that than I am knitting right now. But I have made some progress. And I actually have one more. I have one more FO I should have mentioned. It's just one that I started on vacation but finished here. As I mentioned, because I lost my hat on the trip over, and I finished all the projects I was working on, I had to buy yarn at Loops in London, which is a really beautiful little shop. It's small. It's on a couple of floors, but it's like a little jewel box. It was packed with people, so it's definitely a destination shop for tourists, but extremely well curated. Like every single nook and cranny has something in it, and a lot of dyers that I knew. So they had Life in the Long Grass, and they had I think they had some hedgehog fiber, Madeline Tosh, Spin Cycle. So they had some names from the U.S. that I knew. And then they had some of their own brand of yarn, one of which I'll show you in a minute because I grabbed that as sort of a souvenir skein for me. But while I was there, I picked up, this is La Bien-Aimée Quarry Confetti. I could buy this in the U.S., so it wasn't a particularly unique yarn, but it is one that I have wanted to use before. I've only ever worked with La Bien-Aimée, I think, in a fingering weight yarn, and when this came out, I thought it was really great. I don't have a lot of use for worsted weight yarn for myself, so I thought it would be great to grab a skein and make a hat. This is called the Revelation hat, so it has this nice decrease detail on the crown decreases, but otherwise it is a 1x1 rib all the way up until you get to those decreases, which get a little bit lost, I think, with the confetti, the nips in there. It looked more defined in the photo in Ravelry. The designer's Anne Gagnon. It may be her only pattern, and I couldn't find any Instagram handle for her, but it was, again, perfect travel knitting because you're just going round and round and round with ribbing. Great TV knitting as well until you get to the crown decreases, and then once you get those set up, they become pretty obvious as well. So this will be actually going to Indie Untangled, because that is where, if you donate to donate an item to Knit the Rainbow that's knit in yarn from anyone who's ever vended at Indie Untangled over the past 10 years, you get an entry into a raffle for a giveaway of, I don't know what it is, even going to be merch of some sort, yarn, maybe tote bags, neither of which I actually need, but who doesn't like to win a prize? And I can always just turn around and use it as a giveaway prize in the Knitalong Crochetalong or in the Knit the Rainbow accessories drive itself. So maybe it all connects that way. Anyway, great fun knitting this Ribellation hat. Loved this yarn. I wish I had more use for worsted in my life, because this is a really, really fun yarn. And I think this in a navy blue with these little pops of color would be a fantastic sweater for me. But, you know, the warm Southern California weather is the cross I bear. So, anyway, onto actual FOs. So the one that I probably made the most progress on is the Rainbow Eucalyptus Beanie. That is the crochet beanie and mitt pattern set that we did for the Crochetalong for this fall. So here is what I've got. Probably doesn't look like much more than what I had before, but it actually is. This is fingering weight on a little hook. So it's done on a 3¼ millimeter hook. So even though it's, I don't know what this is, probably 6 inches in diameter at this point, it takes a while to get around with this teeny tiny little hook. Plus, it's now going faster, but the obviously it's top down, which is a new construction for me, and the increase sections were a little bit tricky. I will say they were a little bit tricky to learn. You're doing front post and back crochets to get this ribbing effect, but just the increases in getting that pattern set up took a little longer for me than probably would for a more proficient crocheter. But now I'm kind of in the flat pits, and you're just doing the ribbing with the occasional. I just did the first row of them there. You can see one right there. The first of these like cable crossovers. So now it's super fun, and I'm hoping to get this finished over the Rhinebeck weekend, because at this point you're just kind of going around and round, and every couple of rows you throw in one of those cable twists, and then you bind off at the end, I think. This, again, as I mentioned, is called the Rainbow Eucalyptus Beanie. There is a matching fingerless mitt set that goes with it that I'm looking forward to working on this winter. It was designed by Cerulean Orchid, who has been a bunch of fantastic crochet patterns, and the yarn, which I absolutely love, is called After the Storm by Teal Torch Knits, who I am looking forward to meeting in person this weekend because she'll be vending. And it is this beautiful light gray with just these very little bitty speckles. And so, like, when you get to one, it's just, sometimes it's not even an entire stitch that you get the speckle. So it just really is incredibly well placed, and I think is making a beautiful, beautiful fabric. So looking forward to finishing these. I don't think I'll start the mitts while I'm up there, just because it'll be the first time I'm trying to crochet mitts, and I don't like to start new techniques, new things like that when I'm on the road. I need something that's known and just easily able to be jumped into. So that's that. I am also working on the Save de Bun hat / cowl, and I'm sorry, I'm looking for where I put it. Okay, here it is. So this is the Save de Bun hat, but I'm making mine into a cowl because I didn't do a gauge swatch and my gauge is way off. So it's going to be a perfect size for a cowl, but it would be a gigantic hat. This is a design by Yarn Gone Wild Yarncraft, Tanya at Yarn Gone Wild Yardcraft, in yarn that was dyed up specifically for the Knitalong and Crochetalong, by Jess at Jada Woo Designs. This is been a ton of fun as well. It's new techniques. This, I think it's called a modified brick stitch that gives it this texture here in the gold. I'm starting another one of those sections here in the variegated. So I'm going to probably, it'll probably go another couple inches, and then I'll figure out what to do, whether I want to do another round of ribbing or just bind it off, in whatever the pattern is at the top. I thought originally that I needed to have ribbing for symmetry, but someone was like, you don't need to do that. You don't need to figure out, because the ribbing is done side to side. And so we'll see when I get there. But this will move relatively quickly because it's like a light worsted, and you're using a big hook. So I will have plenty of yarn left to do a hat out of it, because you could have gotten 3 hats out of the 3 skeins of yarn. So I will probably, since mine is a cowl, I'll probably get a cowl and a hat. I will just have to do a gauge swatch and figure out which hook size I need to get it to be down on the side. So when these are done, these will go to Knit the Rainbow. Although, I might, actually, for me, a cowl, the close-up cowls, I think don't work, because it's, like a turtleneck, and we don't really need a turtleneck here. I like more of like an affinity scarf. So maybe at some point I will take Tanya's design and just make it even bigger, and then have something like this as a infinity cowl kind of thing. And maybe these aren't really my colors, so maybe something that's more in my color family. So this is Save Da Bun hat, DAH bun, which was one of the other crochet patterns for the Crochetalong this fall. It's been a lot of fun, and if you go on Instagram and look for the hashtag EndAidsCAL Fall 23, you'll see a lot of those, and it's really fun color combinations that people have put together. And people are getting very inventive in terms of turning them into cowls. It's designed as a hat with a cinch, like a bun hat, so a bun or a ponytail could come through it. So you've seen some people do those, and some people make them as cowls, as I have. So the last thing I'm working on is also, not the last thing. The last thing from the Knitalong and Crochetalong that I am working on are the sock pattern, the Embracing Our Natures sock, by Samba Knits. And this is a cabled sock pattern, absolutely gorgeous. I'll post a picture of the final product here, because mine is not going to give you any sense of what it's actually supposed to look like. I mentioned my 2023 knitting intentions before, and one of the other ones was to become a more skilled sock knitter and to try to find the sort of vanilla sock pattern and technique that I could use then going forward to become a faster sock knitter, because I'm a very slow sock knitter, it seems. So perhaps not the wisest choice for a couple of firsts. So a first toe up sock. I've done a cabled sock before, so it's not really a first cabled sock. So I guess it's really just a first toe up sock. But I'm trying to do them 2 at a time on 2 small circular needles. So I tried other techniques this year. I've done 9-inch circulars. I've done, I think, magic loop. I don't think I did 2 at a time magic loop. And then I've done the knit the giant tube, drunk knitter, 2 socks in 1, I think is the technique, where you then go back and add the toes and cut them apart and add the heels. And so this was kind of the last thing that I was going to try, which is doing it these 2 at a time on circular needles. I'm not going to try double pointed needles because I've knit enough with double pointed needles to know that that's not it. That's not the way for me. So this one took some back and forth and fits and starts to get the cast on and the first few rounds done properly. It is using I want to say surprisingly stretchy. That's not it. Someone's magic cast on. Judy's magic cast on, which finally worked, and I think it actually worked quite well, but it did take some time for me to get it doing it 2 at a time, and ultimately thanks to a recommendation from Caitlin at Porter Wool Co. I did one, got a few rows done on it, did the other one, got a few rows done on it, and then put them on the 2. Didn't try to do 2 cast on side by side and then those first few rows because that was maddening. I am using Caitlin's yarn, so this is Porter Wool Co. yarn in a colorway called Petal Party Remix. She dyed up another colorway called Hope, specifically for the Knitalong and the Crochetalong, but as part of my goal to knit more from stash, I bought the Hope colorway because I will always support the dyers and designers who are supporting me in my AIDS Lifecycle fundraising. So I bought a skein of that, but I put that into the prize pile for giveaways down the road. So I'm not even one pattern repeat through the cable section. I've messed up the cables in the beginning horribly wrong. I was looking at the pattern and thought the little dots meant knit instead of purl. So the first few rows are completely backwards. But we're back on track, and I'm not going to go back and fix them because that would be a nightmare. And I'm just going to go forward, moving along. I finally have gotten it, the system down on this knitting 2 at a time on small circulars. I think that my circulars are too small. Something I may have been in the Cat Boarding book, suggested the next size bigger than this, but that's not what I had. I think that would make it a little bit easier, but these are working okay. I think the big hack that no one recommended it, but it just kind of came to me and has really helped out is using these little stoppers. And so I always just move the stoppers to the opposite needles so I don't get confused about which needles I'm supposed to be working on, because if you're not familiar with the technique, you're always working on one needle. So it's the needle that connects, one needle. You knit all the stitches using this one needle, and then you switch to the other one. Unlike it feels like to me when you're doing it feels like the opposite of knitting magic loop, because there you're always working. It's always one one needle, and so it can confuse you. And when you make that mistake and knit it onto the wrong needle, it's a mess. It's everything. You basically need to get a third set of needles and pull things all the way up. And I had to do that twice before I got these stoppers. Now, and I thought I had solved the problem initially because you probably can't see it, but I took a Sharpie and painted the tips of one needle pink. I mean, it's worn off a little bit since I did it, and I thought that would really help me remember which ones I was supposed to be knitting, but I still had problems. So these stoppers have really been a game changer. I just swap them, and then I know those are the ones I need to be working on. So I don't think these are going to come with me. I don't think this is either travel knitting on the plane or particularly good knitting for the Rhinebeck house at night because it's too concentrated. I'm doing the cables without cable needles. It's only two different. It's a right 2/2 right cross, 2/2 left cross. Those are both pretty easy to do without a cable needle, but it's not something I'm going to do sitting around talking. So this is going to have to stay here. I'm not going to finish these before the end of the Knitalong and the Crochetalong, which is okay. We value at the end age Knitalongs and Crochetalongs, we value participation more than we value completion, which is why only one round of prizes are for FOs and the other 4 or 5 are for whips. So those will hopefully be done by the end of the year, which will then help me hit my get 3 pair of socks knit in 2023 intention as well. So that is that in terms of whips and FOs for the Knitalong and Crochetalong. The only other thing that is new that I've added to the mix is the Stephen West Geo Gradient Mystery Knitalong. It was released while we were traveling, or the first clue came out, so I've gotten a little bit of a late start on it. This is as far as I've gotten. I had started the original Clue 1 and had done, I don't know, 1 quadrant of it or something, and then just decided that he was asking us to do this, and that was fine by me. I know he put this out as like the simpler version back in the original sort of rounds of discussion around this. I found this start anything but simple. The circular cast, or the whatever you call it, the little circular cast on, which is kind of like magic circle in crochet, that wasn't hard, but having all of these stitch markers to mark where the increases, and then doing those increases on those first few rows was really fiddly, and I had to rip it out 4 or 5 times before I finally got going. In fact, I had to do just an extra garter ridge row in this middle section. So it's, I think they're supposed to be 5, and I think that one's going to be 6, just because I needed to get like an even round in there where there were actually bars to lift up to do the make ones, the make one left, make one right. That, and I think I replaced. I know Stephen seems to love the backwards loop cast on as an increase, and you were doing increases on increases, and with the backward loop cast on, you don't have anything connecting it to the knitting, so there's no bar to pick up. So I just found it really difficult to do the next round of increases off of those. So I did knit front and backs. So I don't think anyone's going to notice that I did it a little bit differently. But there it is. The yarn I'm using. I'll pull out my little balls. You can see my scraps from the originals. I've just been using them up. There we go. As I go. But these are the colors. It's awful. Oh, God. Okay. Yeah, that's not at all messy. Anyway, it is Undercover Otter. It is a yak silk merino. I can't remember the colors. I will get them to you next time. One of them I know is called Pod People, because when I posted the original picture of the colors and said, left to right, one's called Rosemary, one's called Pod People, and Kristen from We Share Needles said, did they actually call a yarn Poo People? And I was like, no, it's actually Pod People, but from now on I will refer to it as Poo People. So I think that's the kind of pea green. It'll be the third colorway is Poo People. But I'm loving that base, that yak silk base is fantastic to work with. So that one might actually, because it's just going around and around, and I know kind of where the increases are, that one might actually make it to Rhinebeck as something I can work on. No illusions that I'm going to finish Clue 1 anytime before Clue 4 comes out. So that's fine. I'm loving the way that the MCAL is looking. Otherwise, the ones that I've seen, I think it looks really really neat, and I'm loving my colors. So that's that. Okay. Let's talk about acquisitions. I don't think I have any heart mail or anything related to prizes for the Knitalongs and Crochetalongs to show. So most of this is going to be acquisitions that I did on holiday. There is one other thing that I see there that is nice. But let's talk about holiday yarn acquisitions. As I mentioned, we missed out on going to the big grand dame of Irish local yarn stores in Dublin called This Is Knit. So I saved myself some some cash there. While I was at Carol Feller's shop, Stolen Stitches in Cork, as I mentioned, I talked with her about knitting her cardigan. I'm going to pop a picture of it up here. It's called, let's go with Woodburn. I'll put the actual name here while we're talking about it. But here's the picture of it. As I mentioned, it's shown on a woman. I looked through the pattern. There was nothing in it that made me think that there was anything that I would need to do in terms of shaping, or anything that was gender specific, in terms of, there wasn't like, bust darts or anything like that I would need to figure out how to do with the cabling. But I was able to chat with her and say, I was thinking about making this. Anything you would recommend? And she did recommend. She pointed out that at some point there's some waist shaping that I would probably want to get rid of and just do the back panel flat. And so while I was there, I grabbed some of her own yarn. So this is called Blasta, and it's a yarn that she designed. It is spun in Donegal, and it is a mix of 60% Irish wool and then 40% New Zealand wool. It is rustic feeling. It's a beautiful olive color. I think it's actually the color of the sample that the picture I posted up there. And she had enough of it in stock for a sweater quantity, so I grabbed that. Who knows when this will get made? Because I have a couple other sweaters that I'm contemplating. But cardigan is the next thing, so it could be this one. It could be one of the other ones that I planned. And it's a beautiful yarn, but it is pretty rustic. It's not going to be next to the skin soft. And I'd have to pull, and I will at some point pull out the other wool that I'm about to show you to see how it compares, whether the New Zealand component of this softens it up as well. It is a 232 yards. So I think that's a worsted weight. It doesn't say on here, but the colorway Coillte, Colte. I don't know. It is probably an Irish word that I am butchering. So I grabbed that. While I also mentioned I was in Cork, got to meet Evan Bale on Instagram, and we had talked, and she was super helpful. And she has a blog called Evan OK. And she has tons of information up there on traveling through Ireland. She's from the U.S., but I think 15 or so years ago, she and her husband moved to Cork and made that their home. And so she's tons of great information on her blog about traveling through Ireland, places to see, restaurants to go to. She's a big foodie, so there's a lot of great things. So we have that, in common as well as some resources in terms of Irish wool and yarn stores and things like that. So anyway, as we were talking and I knew I was going to meet her. I said, I know the shipping is insane to get yarn over to Ireland. I want to pull together some things from dyers that you probably aren't able to get your hands on there. So I put together a little set of yarn, and some Lola bean in there, some magpie fibers, some of the fully spun, just things that I didn't think she would be able to find in any of the yarn stores that she might have access to in Ireland. And so she's like, I'm going to go through my stash. And so we did this kind of little yarn swap, which was really, really fun. So she gave me some sort of quintessentially Irish yarns, and I was giving her some U.S. yarns. So the stuff that I got from her, I got 2 skeins of this electric green from Eve at Eve Chambers Textiles. So Eve was a dyer for when we did Evan's shawl. Eve put together some kits for folks who either wanted to order from Ireland or were in the UK and wanted to participate and use her yarn. So I didn't get to meet her on this trip because she lives way, way out in the country. But Evan had some of her yarn in her stash. So this is beautiful, sort of, I would say almost, it looks electric, granny apple green kind of color with a little bit of tonality in it as well. So 2 skeins of fingering weight. So that is saying shawl at some point to me. And then I didn't see it in her shop, but Carol Feller also does a fingering weight version of her Blasta yarn. So the same mix of 60% Irish wool, 40% New Zealand wool, spun in Donegal. And this is a gorgeous, right in my wheelhouse, sort of blues and greens colorway. So that is gorgeous. And then truly, truly woolly wool, Irish wool. This is called Zwarbles, and it is a woman in Kilkenny who has a farm and raises these Zwarble sheep. So I believe this is the natural color. They're black sheep, but it is very woolly. I think it's worsted weight. Maybe it's DK. No, it is DK. So I think it'll be fun to try to find something that maybe uses this in some white and black color work. So I think that would be fun. So this is Zwarbles of Ireland. And the other thing that she gave me, which I was super excited about, is one of her books. So Evan has published several knitting books. I had one or two of them, I think, already, but I did not have this one. This is called Ultraviolet Knits. It was featuring dyers who dye yarn that's UV reactive. I didn't realize it until just now when I was flipping through it. I've actually made her Wreath Nebula mitts. It was a really fun, fast, perfect little gift project, and great for using scraps of yarn. So that's really fun. So you should check out Evan online. She has one book that's all about sheep from the British Isles and features dyers and I think it's mainly her designs, but different dyers and wool breeders in the British Isles. But it was really great to meet her. And the other things that I bought over there were actually, well, I told you I bought a sweater's quantity of Aran yarn from Donegal. I've actually bought it on Inishmore, the Aran Island, in the shop where the little woman was knitting some Aran sweaters, and had some wool and had enough sweater quantity for me. What I think I'm going to do with this is there are patterns that are available from one of the sweater companies over there. I can't remember one of the big ones. AaronSweaters.com or something. And in all of their stores, they have a bunch of things about family names and family crests. And then they have patterns that are supposedly the Aran patterns for the various family names. Now, I don't know how much of that is truth. I do know that this story that women knit these, each family had its own pattern so that you could identify the bodies of sailors if they drowned at sea, apparently is just a myth. That's not actually true. Each woman seemed to have a pattern that she would knit because she basically memorized the pattern and could do it quickly by just doing the same pattern over and over again. Whether how much truth there is to this particular pattern is the McElhaney family Aran or not, but regardless, I bought the pattern for the name that is from our family, and I thought it's a very bare bones kind of pattern, so I may not be able to pull it off, but I thought I would give it a shot with the Aran yarn. So it'll be a big, heavy sweater, but I thought that could be kind of a fun project at some point in my life to do that. And maybe at some point I will be living in a cooler climate where I'd actually get to use it. The other thing I bought, because I had mentioned I was looking for, and I hadn't really found what I was looking for on Ravelry in terms of patterns for cardigans in an Aran style that I could make for myself. So we were in this really cute little town called Kinsale. And one of the things we like to do, I like to go try to find yarn things, but the other thing that we really like to do, because we're not really big souvenir buyers, but we like to go to bookstores in wherever we are, especially if it's a language we speak, so works out well in Ireland. and look at books, and we stumbled into this used bookstore, and I was able to find a vintage Debbie Bliss book called Traditional Knitting, Scottish and Irish Isles, and it actually has there's some Fair Isle stuff in here as well. It's not just, and then Ganseys and things like that, but there is this one that's actually on the cover. There's a series of non-shawl color cardigans, and so I grabbed this. It was someone was laughing on it. They're like, because it's published in 1991, and they're like, how does that count as vintage? I was like, that's a while ago, folks. Like, I know to some of us it feels like it was only yesterday, but I think technically 30 years is when you get to call something vintage. So so that was cool that I got that, and it looks, unlike some of the patterns that I've found online that are also vintage from the 60s or 70s that are really, really bare bones. This one goes into a little bit more depth. I think it'll be helpful. I haven't found anything where it's not seamed, so I think it's going to be a pattern ends up seaming. The other thing I found is we were in a yarn store in Cork, not Carol's store, but another one, and this isn't vintage or particularly traditional in that sense, but it is UK company's sort of Erin Knits little brochure, and so I thought the one on the front, and there's a couple other in there that would fit the bill in terms of cardigans that are not shawl collared. So we'll get that. And that's basically all I got from on vacation. The only other thing that has come into the mail is from the Coven Collective Fiber Arts. So this is a bunch of makers. So I think they're dyers and sewers and notion makers, and I said dyers and yarn folks. I think in the Pacific Northwest, but I met them at Flock. They were all, there's 6 or 7 of them, and they were all together, and we got to chatting, and we exchanged information, and they just launched, I think it's the first collection, a couple weeks before I left, so I bought that, and it was here when I bought from that, and it was here when I got back, so I'll show you what I got. The first thing I got was this adorable bag with little fat cats and pumpkins. So, that's super cute. And then I bought some of the yarn. They had a bunch of really cool colors. I'm only going to show you. Well, it's actually 2 colors, but three different yarns, because one of them I've put aside for some other purpose that I can't share. But I love this. Actually, would have worked pretty well with my MCal colors. This is called Ectoplasm on DK. I think it is going to team up with. I don't know if I'd use this, although I think it would look really cool. This is Omen on the same DK base, the Prophecy DK 100% superwash merino. I just think it would be, with a navy blue, a really cool brioche hat, probably. I just, because the contrast is going to be so great, I think that'd be really fun. I just loved, you know me, if it's blue, I got to buy it. But I just love this Omen colorway, and they had it on this tweed base, which I absolutely fell in love with. So I got 2 skeins of that, tweed sock base. My original thought was to make a pair of socks, but then when I saw 2 full skeins, I'm starting to think maybe some sort of 2 or 3 skein, and maybe grab a contrasting color, 2 or 3 skein shawl. So we shall see. But Coven Collective Fiber Arts, they're Coven Collective FA on Instagram, so go check them out. They're a ton of fun, and hopefully I'll see them next year again at Flock. So that is it in terms of acquisitions. In terms of Craftivism this week, just a couple things I wanted to mention. Valerie, I mentioned her before as being my fairy godmother on sweater knitting and helping me through the process of getting a sweater that I absolutely love made for Rhinebeck. She and her husband were en route to the Dallas-Fort Worth Fiber Fest. They live in Texas, and their car broke down and is beyond repair. And so they are currently living without a vehicle. And if you know Texas at all, you know that it is not a place that is particularly hospitable to life without a vehicle. So A GoFundMe has been started in the fiber community to help Valerie and Jim raise some money to try to get a new vehicle, which they desperately need. Even though she works primarily at home, they need it for medical doctor's visits to get to and from their medical visits, and just to get to the store and things like that. And they're relying on the friends right now, and I'm sure the occasional Uber or whatever, but that gets expensive and is not sustainable. They are fantastic people. Valerie gives back so much to this community. Not only is she hosting sort of her own sort of sweater workshops where she's helping people like she helped me, but she has opened up her Zoom account 4 times a week to the community, just to create a space where folks can get together and share what they're working on and have some community. And so she's given so much to the fiber community that I think it would be great if we could all come together and help her get a new vehicle and get back on track in terms of being able to move around. So here is the QR code that will take you right to the GoFundMe. If you can help out, it would be greatly appreciated. I mentioned it already, but I wanted to mention it here. Knit the Rainbow is going to be at the events this weekend collecting garments. So Indie Untangled, you can donate your accessories. You can donate your accessories there if you bring an accessory that's knit in yarn from one of the vendors who've vended at Indie Untangled over the past 10 years. You will get an entry into a giveaway. There is a list on their website of all those vendors, so you may actually already have one done. If not, you could probably grab something maybe in your stash and get a hat done quickly. And then I believe that Austin from Knit the Rainbow will actually have his own booth at Woolen Folks. So go check them out, say hello, and if you have things you can bring to donate, fantastic. If not, I hope you will continue to make things and contribute as part of our accessories drive that we're running for them. I mentioned the pattern that I knit while I was on vacation called Zany Zebra from Chic and Regal Knits. So that's Helena is the designer. She has a ton of patterns. Here's just a scroll through the Ravelry page of all her designs. She does such amazing things and has such fun with colors and patterns. I wanted to mention her here, and she's one that I've wanted to mention for a while, but in addition to being a great designer, she gives back to the animal rescue community. So 25% of all of her pattern sales are donated every year to animal rescues, and she has a list on her website of all the different rescues that she has donated to over time. I'm an owner of 2 rescue dogs, one of which has been a problem child from the very beginning, but we still love her. But animal rescue is something that's near and dear to my heart, so I thought I would pass on that information if you weren't familiar with the work that she is doing. Go check out her website. She has an amazing story, as well as sort of how knitting has sort of changed her life in terms of like her mental health and things like that. So she has a great story and is doing great work. And the last thing I wanted to mention is an organization called Yarn for the Birds. It is run by a woman named Anastasia, and what it is kind of like a D-Stash for Good sale, but she takes donations of yarn and I think needles, and then knitted nests, so you can knit nests, and I think there may be a pattern on the website. And what she does is she takes those donations of yarn and does D-Stash sales for them, the proceeds of which then go to fund wild bird rehabilitation programs. So I think it's a constantly running thing up on her website. Her Instagram is Yarn for the Birds, so go check that out. And if you have some spare yarn that you don't want to donate to D-Stash for Good, or you're interested in knitting one of the nests, or maybe have some needles or something that you can donate. She also takes cash donations, so that I'm sure would be much appreciated. But it is just another avenue for you to maybe take some unused or unloved yarn in your collection and put it to a great cause. So with that, I know I've run a little bit long. Sorry, it's been 3 weeks and I had a lot to talk about, but I appreciate it if you've made it this far, sticking with me and taking some time out of your week to spend it with me. I hope that I see many of you at Rhinebeck this weekend. If you see me, please say hi, give me a hug. I look forward to meeting as many of you as possible. Those of you that I know, I look forward to seeing you again. If I haven't met you yet, I can't wait to meet you. And if you like this content, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. We continue to try to build this community slowly but surely, and every little bit helps. So I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. See you soon. Take care.